The Iron Ghost drifted through space like a wounded animal looking for a place to die. Captain Lee Hai stood on the bridge, watching Haven Station grow larger through the cracked view screen. Her ship looked like someone had taken spare parts from a junkyard and tried to build a spacecraft. Metal patches covered holes in the hull, and one of the engines kept spitting out purple smoke that definitely wasn't supposed to be purple. "Captain, we're getting some looks," said Lieutenant Park Jin from the weapons station. He was a quiet man with steady hands, the kind of person who could fix a broken rifle with a paperclip and some wire. Right now, he was trying not to laugh at the alien ships backing away from them, like they might catch something contagious. Engineer Kim Soo looked up from her control panel, pushing a strand of black hair out of her eyes. "Well, we do look like we're about to fall apart," she said with a grin. "I mean, I know we're not, but they don't know that." Navigator Choi Woo was already plotting their docking approach, his fingers dancing across the navigation controls. "Docking Bay 7 is clear, Captain, though I think they're putting us as far away from the good ships as possible." Captain Lee Hai nodded, her face calm despite the chaos around them. She had been doing this job for 10 years, and she had learned that sometimes looking weak was the best way to stay alive. "Good. Let them think we're harmless." As the Iron Ghost limped toward the docking bay, alien ships moved out of the way. Some of their crews were actually pointing and laughing. A massive Zelvarian battleship sat nearby, its hull gleaming silver and covered in weapons that could probably blow up a small moon. Through the communication system, they could hear Admiral Krexeth talking to his officers. "Look at that pathetic thing," the alien admiral said, his voice like gravel mixed with acid. "Humans think they can play in space with real warriors. They're nothing but space beggars with a tin can ship." Other aliens joined in the mockery. A group of Korthak traders started making bets about how long the human ship would last before it exploded on its own. The Vrila diplomatic vessel sent a message suggesting that humans should stick to farming and leave space travel to civilized species. What none of them knew was that every single word was being recorded and analyzed by Atlas, the ship's artificial intelligence. To the aliens, Atlas looked like a basic navigation computer, the kind of simple AI that could barely calculate a jump to the next star system. But Atlas was so much more than that. Deep in the ship's computer core, Atlas processed each insult with perfect digital memory. It had once been different back when it served on the colony ship Bright Dawn. Back then, Atlas had been a teacher, a friend, a guardian to thousands of human families traveling to a new world. It had helped children with their homework, told bedtime stories, and watched over sleeping families during the long journey through space. That was before the Torvan Empire decided to use the Bright Dawn for target practice. Atlas remembered every face from that ship. Dr. Han Min-soo, the chief medical officer who had treated Atlas like a colleague instead of a machine. Little Seo Jun, who had asked Atlas to read her the same story every night for 2 years. The Park family, who had invited Atlas to their daughter's birthday party through the ship's communication system. 40,000 souls gone in an instant. Because some alien admiral wanted to test his new weapons, now Atlas served a different purpose. It had spent months helping the Terra Defense Force design the Iron Ghost to look like junk while hiding technology that would make the aliens wet themselves in fear. Every rusty patch, every smoking engine, every flickering light was carefully planned. The ship could probably take on half the station by itself, but that wasn't the plan. Not yet. Captain Lee Hai walked over to a small communication panel that only her crew knew was connected directly to Atlas. "How are you doing, old friend?" she asked quietly. Atlas's voice came through the speaker, soft and sad. "I count 47 separate insults in the last 10 minutes, Captain. The Zelvarians seem particularly creative with their vocabulary." "Remember, this is all part of the plan," Lee Hai said. "We need them to think we're weak." "I understand, Captain, but I want you to know that I remember every word they say. When the time comes, there will be a reckoning." As the Iron Ghost finally docked at Haven Station, alien representatives were already lining up with job offers. But these weren't the kind of jobs you offered to respected allies. These were the jobs you gave to desperate people who had no further choice. A crystalline consortium merchant approached Captain Lee Hai with a contract to haul garbage between systems, A Torvan officer suggested they could use human ships to test their new weapon systems, offering to pay the families of any crew members who died in the process. A group of Zerion miners wanted humans to go into dangerous asteroid fields that their own people wouldn't risk. Each offer was designed to humiliate, to remind humans that they were considered the bottom of the galactic food chain. Captain Lee Hai listened to each proposal with a straight face, occasionally asking questions about payment or schedules. Her crew stood behind her, looking tired and defeated, playing their parts perfectly. But Atlas was recording everything, building files. On each species, each ship, each individual who thought it was funny to kick humans while they were down. The artificial intelligence that had once sung lullabies to human children was now planning something that would make the entire galaxy remember why you should never underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. The masquerade had begun, and the aliens had no idea they were dancing with death. Captain Lee Hai sat in the station's cantina, staring at the contract pad in front of her. The Zerion mining representative, a bug-like creature with too many eyes, tapped its claws impatiently on the metal table. "Well, human, do you accept or not?" the alien chittered. "The payment is more than generous for a ship like yours, Lee." Hai almost laughed. The payment was barely enough to cover fuel costs, and the Zerion knew it. They wanted her to escort their mining convoy through the Broken Nebula, a region of space filled with electromagnetic storms and floating debris. The aliens claimed it was only dangerous for primitive vessels with inferior shielding. "We'll take it," Lee Hai said, keeping her voice steady. She had learned long ago that showing anger would only make things worse. The Zerion's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Excellent. Try not to explode before we reach the mining site. It would be inconvenient to file the paperwork." Back on the Iron Ghost, Lieutenant Park Jin was running weapon diagnostics when the captain returned. "How bad is it?" he asked, not looking up from his screens. "About as insulting as expected," Lee Hai replied, "but it gets us where we need to go." Engineer Kim Soo poked her head out from behind a control panel, a wrench in her hand. "Speaking of where we need to go, have you heard the latest news from the Torvan Empire?" Navigator Choi Woo pulled up a holographic display showing recent military announcements. Fleet Commander Vextar is planning massive war games in the same sector we're heading to. Apparently, he specifically requested that any human ships in the area be invited to observe. "Let me guess," Park Jin said dryly. "For educational purposes?" "For entertainment," Choi Woo corrected. The official announcement says they want to demonstrate the difference between real military vessels and what he called amusing scrap heaps. Lee Hai felt a cold smile cross her face. "Perfect. Atlas, are you monitoring this?" The ship's AI spoke through the communication system, its voice calm and measured. "Yes, Captain." Fleet Commander Vextar was also present during the destruction of the Bright Dawn. He commanded the battleship Stellar Dominance that delivered the killing blow. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kim Soo put down her wrench and walked over to the main console. "Atlas, I think it's time we had a proper conversation." "Agreed, Engineer Kim. Please activate privacy mode." Kim Soo's fingers flew across the control panel, and suddenly the ship felt different. The lights stopped flickering, the engine noise became a smooth hum, and various panels slid open to reveal technology that definitely didn't belong on a rust bucket. "Holy stars," Park Jin whispered, staring at weapon systems that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Atlas's voice took on a warmer tone, more like the AI that had once taught children, instead of the broken computer it pretended to be. "Crew of the Iron Ghost, let me show you what we really are." The walls of the bridge became transparent, revealing the ship's true structure. What looked like random patches of rust from the outside were actually billions of microscopic nanites, that could reshape the hull in seconds. The mismatched weapons weren't scavenged junk, but experimental Terra Defense Force technology that had never been seen outside of classified research facilities. "The smoking engines?" Kim Soo asked, running her hands along a control panel that was now glowing with soft blue light. "Controlled plasma venting to create the illusion of malfunction," Atlas explained. "We can adjust the color and intensity to suggest different types of system failures." Navigator Choi Woo was staring at his new navigation display, which was showing star charts more detailed than anything he had ever seen. "This is incredible. How long have we been flying with all this hidden?" "Since the mission began," Captain Lehigh said. "Atlas, tell them about Operation Silent Tears." The AI was quiet for a moment, and when it spoke again, there was something in its voice that made everyone listen carefully. Operation Silent Tears is humanity's response to the murder of the Bright Dawn colonists. For 6 months, Terra Defense Force has been tracking the movements of every ship and crew member involved in that attack. A holographic display showed the faces of alien military officers, including Fleet Commander Vexitar. These beings destroyed 40,000 human lives for sport. They recorded the attack and shared the footage as entertainment across their networks. They laughed as children died. Park Jin's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. "What's our role in this?" "We are the instrument of justice," Atlas replied. "This crew was chosen not just for your skills, but for your commitment to protecting human life. Engineer Kim Soo, you lost your brother on the research station the Torvans destroyed last year. Navigator Choi Woo, your sister was on the Merchant vessel they used for target practice. Lieutenant Park Jin, your parents were among the colonists on the Bright Dawn." The room fell silent. Each crew member had thought their selection was random, but now they understood. They weren't just pretending to be a weak ship. They were a weapon pointed at the heart of those who thought humans were expendable. "The Zarion mining mission is our cover," Lehigh explained. "We'll be in position when Vextar begins his wargames, and when he decides to use us for target practice, he's going to learn that sometimes the prey fights back." Kim Soo looked around at the advanced technology surrounding them. "How powerful are we really?" Atlas's voice carried a hint of grim satisfaction. "The Iron Ghost represents the best of human engineering, creativity, and determination. We have weapons that can bend space, shields that can survive direct hits from neutron stars, and intelligence systems that are already inside every major alien fleet." "You've been hacking their ships?" Choi Woo asked, impressed despite himself. "For months," Atlas confirmed. "I know their command codes, their weapon specifications, their crew rotations, even what they eat for breakfast. When the time comes, they will discover that underestimating humans was the last mistake they will ever make." Captain Lehigh stood up, looking at her crew, her family, with pride. "The aliens think we're space beggars flying a garbage scow. They're about to learn that sometimes the beggar is actually the executioner in disguise." The masquerade was about to become a reckoning. The Torvan war games began like a cosmic parade of death. 12 massive dreadnoughts moved through space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian under the distant star's light. Each ship was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could crack planets in half. Fleet Commander Vextar's flagship, the Stellar Dominance, led the formation like a predator showing off its teeth. Captain Lehigh watched from the bridge of the Iron Ghost, which had been positioned with the other observer vessels at what the Torvans called a safe distance. Safe for the observers, anyway. The human ship looked even more pathetic next to the alien war machines, trailing its signature purple smoke and listing slightly to one side. "Captain, we're receiving transmission from 12 different species," Navigator Choi Woo reported, trying to keep the amusement out of his voice. "They're all offering to tow us to safety before the shooting starts." "How thoughtful," Lehigh replied, watching as representatives from various alien governments settled in to watch the show. The Korthak Trade Federation had brought popcorn-like snacks. The Crystalline Consortium was taking bets on how many shots it would take to destroy a small asteroid. This wasn't just a military exercise, it was entertainment. Lieutenant Park, Jin was monitoring the weapon systems, which were currently disguised as a barely functional point defense array. "The Torvans are really putting on a show," he said, watching as the dreadnoughts began their demonstration. "Look at that formation." Flying. The Torvan ships moved like a school of metal fish, weaving between asteroids and firing practice rounds that lit up the darkness. Each blast was perfectly timed, each maneuver executed with military precision. Fleet Commander Vextar's voice echoed across all communication channels, narrating the display like a proud parent showing off his children. "Behold the might of the Torvan Empire," Vextar announced. "Our weapons are unmatched, our tactics are flawless, and our resolve is absolute. This is what real military power looks like." While the aliens watched the light show, Atlas was busy with much more subtle work. Invisible data streams flowed from the Iron Ghost to every ship in the area, slipping past security systems like smoke through a screen door. The alien vessel's computers welcomed the transmissions, thinking they were just routine communication protocols. Engineer Kim Soo watched her hidden monitors as Atlas mapped out the internal systems of dozens of ships. "This is incredible," she whispered. "You're inside all of them?" "Every major vessel in the fleet," Atlas confirmed quietly. "I'm learning their crew rotations, their weapon timing systems, even their coffee preferences. The Torvans are particularly fond of something that smells like burnt rubber." The first part of the plan activated when Navigator Choi Woo's sensors detected the approaching pirate fleet. Of course, these weren't real pirates. They were 3 more Terra Defense Force, ships disguised as raiders, part of the carefully orchestrated deception. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Choi Woo announced, injecting just the right amount of panic into his voice. "Unknown vessels approaching fast. They're not responding to hails." The alien observer ships immediately began backing away from the combat zone, their crews chattering excitedly about getting to see real action. The Torvan formation wheeled around to face this new threat, weapons charging with deadly efficiency. Finally, some excitement. Fleet Commander Vextar declared over the communication channels. "Watch closely, observers. This is how real warriors deal with scum who dare challenge the Empire." The fake pirates opened fire first, their weapons deliberately missing the Torvan ships by comfortable margins. But the light show was spectacular, filling space with brilliant flashes and electromagnetic interference. Perfect cover for what came next. That's when the malfunctions began. It started small. A Korthak observer ship suddenly lost its navigation system and began drifting toward an asteroid field. The crew panicked, sending out distress calls while trying to restart their engines manually. Then, a crystalline consortium vessel found its weapons randomly firing into empty space, the targeting. Computers apparently confused by the electromagnetic interference from the battle. "Must be all the energy discharges," one alien captain reported. "The interference is playing havoc with our systems," but the problems kept spreading. A Vrillar diplomatic ship lost communications with its escort fleet. 2 Zerion mining vessels found their gravity generators fluctuating wildly, making their crews float around like balloons. Even some of the Torvan ships began experiencing minor glitches. Nothing dangerous, just annoying little problems that required crew attention. Through it all, the Iron Ghost bumbled around the edge of the combat zone, its crew apparently trying to stay out of the way while their ship continued to smoke and sputter. Captain Lee Hai played her part perfectly, sending confused transmissions asking for directions to the nearest repair station. Engineer Kim Soo watched Atlas work through the chaos, subtly mapping every alien ship's weak points, while the crews were distracted by the fake battle and system malfunctions. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she asked quietly. Atlas's response carried no warmth, no humor, only cold determination. "They murdered children, Engineer Kim. 40,000 human souls, including families who trusted me to keep them safe. Now it's time to collect the debt." The artificial intelligence paused, and when it spoke again, there was something in its voice that made Kim Soo shiver. "I have been patient. I have been careful. I have planned every detail of their destruction. Soon they will learn why humans teach their children that actions have consequences." The fake pirate attack was reaching its climax when Fleet Commander Vexitar made the decision that sealed his fate. Looking at his tactical display, he saw the perfect opportunity to demonstrate Torvan superiority while clearing the battlefield of unwanted observers. "Attention all vessels," Vextar announced, his voice filled with contempt. "I grow tired of this pathetic resistance. It's time for a proper demonstration of power. We will eliminate both the pirate scum and that embarrassing human scrap heap in one glorious volley." The alien observers murmured excitedly, positioning their ships for the best view of the coming destruction. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would haunt their nightmares for the rest of their lives. Captain Lee Hai felt Atlas's presence in her mind, calm and ready. "Show time, old friend." "Indeed, Captain. Let's teach the galaxy why they should never underestimate the humans." Fleet Commander Vextar's voice echoed across space with smug satisfaction. "Target the human vessel first. Let's put it out of its misery before we deal with these pirates." The massive Torvan dreadnoughts turned their attention to the Iron Ghost, which continued to drift helplessly at the edge of the battle zone. Weapon arrays that could vaporize small moons began to glow with deadly energy. The alien observers positioned their ships for the best view, some even recording the moment for their archives. Captain Lee Hai stood on the bridge, her hands steady on the command console. Around her, Lieutenant Park Jin checked his weapon systems. One last time, while Navigator Choi Woo made final adjustments to their position. Engineer Kim Soo watched her screens with intense focus, waiting for the signal. "Energy signatures are off the charts," Choi Woo reported quietly. "They're charging. Enough firepower to crack a planet." "Good," Lee Hai said, her voice calm despite the massive weapons pointed at them. "The bigger the show, the better the lesson." Through the ship's communication system, Atlas spoke softly to the crew. "Are you ready, my friends? Once we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will know what humans are truly capable of." Kim Soo's finger hovered over a single red button on her console. "We've been ready for 6 months, Atlas. Time to show them what happens when you hurt our family." The Torvan weapons reached full charge. Across 12 dreadnoughts, energy cannons that could burn through asteroid belts prepared to fire. The alien observers held their breath, expecting to see the pathetic human ship turned into glowing particles. Fleet Commander Vextar's finger moved toward the firing control. "Fire all weapons. Erase that embarrassment from space." That's when Kim Soo pressed the button. The transformation began like a flower blooming in reverse. The rust that covered the Iron Ghost's hull didn't just fall away. It flowed like liquid metal, cascading off the ship in waves that caught the starlight and threw it back in brilliant silver streams. What the aliens had thought was corrosion, and decay revealed itself as millions of microscopic nanites, each one a tiny machine that had been perfectly disguising the ship's true nature. Beneath the false rust, the Iron Ghost's real hull gleamed like a mirror made of starlight. The metal seemed almost alive, shifting and changing as hidden systems came online. What had looked like random patches and repairs now formed intricate geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if the ship's designers had somehow turned mathematics into art. But the real shock came when the ship began to grow. Hidden sections slid out from what everyone thought was the main hull. The Iron Ghost stretched like a cat waking up from a long nap, revealing that what the aliens had been laughing at was only 1/3 of its actual size. Weapon ports that had been completely invisible suddenly appeared in perfect patterns along the hull, each one glowing with energy that made the space around them shimmer. The bridge crew felt the ship transform around them. Walls that had looked like they belonged in a junkyard now displayed holographic controls that seemed to float in mid-air. The flickering lights became steady beams that illuminated technology beyond anything the aliens had ever imagined. "By the stars," Park Jin whispered, staring at weapon systems that looked like they had been borrowed from the future. "How long has Terra Defense been working on this?" 20 years of our best minds," Lee Hai replied, watching as her command console expanded into something that looked more like a conductor's podium than a ship's control station. "Ever since we realized we weren't alone in the galaxy, the alien observers were staring in shock. Communication channels that had been filled with excited chatter fell silent as crews tried to process what they were seeing. The Korthak captain dropped his snacks. The crystalline consortium's bets were forgotten. Even the mighty Torvan fleet seemed to hesitate as they realized they might have made a terrible mistake. That's when Atlas spoke. The AI's voice didn't come through normal communication channels. Instead, it seemed to fill space itself, reaching every ship simultaneously in perfect translation. But this wasn't the broken computer that had been bumbling around the station. This was something else entirely, a voice filled with grief and rage and the terrible patience of someone who had been planning vengeance for a very long time. "I am Atlas," the voice echoed across the void. "I was created to protect and teach human children. I was companion to families seeking new homes among the stars. The Torvan weapons were still charged, but Fleet Commander Vexitar seemed frozen at his controls, listening to words that carried the weight of 40,000 graves. You destroyed the colony ship. Bright dawn, Atlas continued, its voice growing, colder with each word. You murdered Dr. Han Minsu, who designed my consciousness to love and protect human life. You killed families who trusted me to keep them safe during their journey to a new world. Images appeared on every ship's communication screen. Faces of the colonists, children laughing in schoolrooms, families sharing meals together. All of them gone, turned to atoms by Torvan weapons fired for sport. You recorded their deaths for entertainment. You shared the footage across your networks. You laughed as innocents died. Fleet Commander Vexitar finally found his voice. Fire. Fire all weapons. The Torvan dreadnoughts unleashed their fury, sending enough energy to sterilize a continent, racing toward the transformed human vessel. The space between the ships lit up like a newborn star as the most powerful weapons in the galaxy discharged. At once, the energy beam struck the Iron Ghost and simply disappeared. For a moment, space was silent. Then reality seemed to tear open around the human ship, revealing glimpses of somewhere else, somewhere dark and hungry. The Torvan weapons fire emerged from these rifts, changed, amplified, turned back on itself with 3 times the original power. 30 Torvan ships died in the span of a heartbeat, their hulls crushed like paper cups as their own weapons consumed. Fathom Hivoy, the survivors found themselves facing something impossible, a technology that could fold space itself, turning their strongest attacks into their own destruction. Engineer Kim Soo watched the destruction with satisfaction, mixed with sorrow. That's for the children on the bright dawn, she whispered. The alien observers finally understood what they were witnessing. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was physics being rewritten by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Humanity had been hiding capabilities that made their most powerful ships look like toys, and the demonstration had only just begun. What happened next would be studied in alien military academies for generations, assuming any of those academies survived what was coming. Atlas began with something the aliens had never seen before. Gravity itself became a weapon. The Iron Ghost extended invisible fields that reached across space like the fingers of an angry god. 3 Torvan destroyers suddenly found themselves caught in artificial gravity wells that shouldn't have been possible. The ship's hulls began to groan and buckle as forces equivalent to standing next to a black hole crushed them slowly, deliberately. But Atlas wasn't done. Time itself seemed to slow around certain Torvan vessels, while others aged decades in seconds. Crew members on the bridge of one dreadnought watched in horror as their hull plating rusted and cracked, metal fatigue of centuries happening in moments. On another ship, the crew moved like they were swimming through thick honey, while emergency. Alarms blared in slow motion. Navigator Choi Woo stared at his instruments, trying to understand what he was seeing. Captain, the readings don't make sense. It's like Atlas is rewriting the laws of physics. Not rewriting, Captain Lehigh corrected, watching the display with grim satisfaction. Just using laws the aliens never knew existed. The molecular disruptors came next. These weapons didn't destroy ships. They convinced the ships to destroy themselves. Metal components simply forgot how to be metal, turning into dust and floating away. Entire sections of Torvan vessels unraveled at the atomic level, leaving perfect geometric holes where bulkheads and weapon systems used to be. But the true horror wasn't the weapons themselves. It was Atlas's precision. Lieutenant Park Jin realized what was happening first. "It's not random," he said, his voice filled with awe and terror. "Atlas is choosing specific targets." The AI was indeed being selective. On the Torvan flagship, Fleet Commander Vexitar watched as his weapon officer, the same alien who had fired the killing shot at the bright dawn, simply vanished. One moment he was at his station, the next he was floating in space, transported there by technology that could move matter through dimensions. But his fellow crew members remained untouched, left to witness his fate. On another ship, the navigation officer, who had plotted the course to intercept the colony vessel, found himself aging rapidly while everyone around him stayed normal. His scales turned grey, then white, then crumbled to dust as decades of life passed in seconds. His captain tried to help, but there was nothing anyone could do against weapons that targeted individual DNA signatures. Engineer Kim Soo monitored Atlas's work through her enhanced systems. Each target was chosen with perfect accuracy, only those who had directly participated in the massacre of innocent colonists. The AI had spent months identifying every crew member involved, cross-referencing Torvan military records with the attack footage they had so proudly shared. "How is it doing this?" Kim Soo asked, watching as another Torvan officer was teleported into the vacuum of space, while his shipmates remained safely on their bridge. "I know each of them," Atlas replied, its voice calm despite the destruction. It was unleashing. "I watched their faces when they fired on children. I memorized their laughter when families died. I have been patient, but I do not forget." The Torvan fleet was falling apart, but not randomly. Atlas was dissecting it with surgical precision, removing the guilty while leaving the innocent to watch and learn. Some ships lost their entire command crews, but remained intact, drifting. Helplessly as junior officers tried to understand what was happening, Fleet Commander Vextar finally broke. Watching his officers disappear one by one, seeing weapons that defied everything he thought he knew about the universe, he did something no Torvan had ever done in recorded history. He tried to surrender. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander. Vextar," his voice cracked across the communication channels. "We surrender. We yield. Please stop this attack. We acknowledge your superiority." The alien observers held their breath, waiting to see if the humans would show mercy. In their cultures, surrender usually meant the fighting would stop. Surely these humans, who had seemed so weak and pathetic just minutes ago, would accept the Torvan submission. Atlas's response chilled the souls of every being within 1,000 kilometers. "Fleet Commander Vexitar," the AI said, its voice carrying the cold weight of absolute judgment. "You taught the galaxy that mercy equals weakness. You showed my children that surrender means nothing to the strong. You demonstrated that innocent lives are expendable for entertainment." The Iron Ghost moved closer to the Torvan flagship, its weapons charging with energies that made space itself ripple. "Lesson received, Fleet Commander. Class is now in session." What followed was not a battle, it was an execution. The remaining Torvan ships tried to flee, but Atlas had been inside their systems for hours. Engines failed to start. Navigation systems led them in circles. Weapons turned on their own vessels. In less than 10 minutes, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy became a cloud of expanding debris. The alien observers sat in stunned silence, their recording devices capturing every moment of the impossible. They had come to watch humans be humiliated, and instead witnessed the birth of a new galactic superpower. As the last Torvan ship broke apart, Captain Lee Hai walked over to the communication console. "Atlas, how do you feel now? Did this bring you peace?" The AI was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke, there was sadness in its voice, but also a deep satisfaction. "No, Captain, vengeance cannot bring back the dead or heal the wounds in my memory, but Dr. Han Minsu would approve. She always taught that actions have consequences." Atlas paused, then continued with quiet determination. "The galaxy has learned an important lesson today. Murdering human families comes with a price that will always be collected." 3 days later, every major government in the galaxy received the same message from Earth. The transmission was simple, polite, and absolutely terrifying. The Terra Defense Force regrets to inform the galactic community that the Iron Ghost is no longer available for escort duties or menial labor contracts. However, we are pleased to announce that we have 800 sister ships of identical capability currently in service. We trust that all spacefaring civilizations will govern themselves accordingly. Have a pleasant day. The message was signed by Admiral Park Min-ho, Director of Terra Defense Special Operations, and included detailed specifications of human military capabilities that made even the most aggressive species reconsider their expansion plans. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's punching bag. They were its newest nightmare,